Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our global online event, our peace gathering to commemorate the 76th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm Rachel Clark, a member of Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World and Veterans for Peace. In collaboration with many peace organizations, groups, and peace-loving individuals, we started this annual event in 2015. So this is our 7th event. It is my honor to be your host today. Before we start the program, before we start the program, we would like to inform you that everyone is muted here. Guest speakers, please unmute your microphone when your turn comes. The chat room is available for anyone to share their message and comments. And please focus your attention on the speakers throughout the event. This year's theme is passing down history to the next generation. Among our guest speakers, not only a hibakusha who survived the horror of 76 years ago, but also you will see younger generations who have decided to carry on, elaborate, and spread their peace missions. Now, let me bring in two representatives of our groups. First, on behalf of the Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World and all the co-sponsoring organizations, Mari Inoue has wonderful news to share with you. Then she will pass the microphone to Emily Rubino, Executive Director of Peace Action New York State. So please welcome Mari Inoue, followed by Emily Rubino.
Thank you, Rachel. My name is Mari Inoue. I'm a co-founding member of Manhattan Project for Nuclear-Free World. Let me share a screen. So Manhattan Project for Nuclear-Free World was established in March 2012, 1 year after the Fukushima nuclear disaster. We collaborate with groups in the United States as well as in Japan. We also reach out to policymakers and elected officials to promote peace and nuclear-free policies by raising awareness on cost risks and humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. And recently we had a meeting with the AOC's office to talk about why nuclear energy cannot be a climate solution. And also we joined a meeting with the Chuck Schumer's office with amazing Korean American groups to advocate for officially ending the Korean War and normalizing diplomacy with the DPRK. We also post video clips on our YouTube channel, such as testimonies of those who are still going through difficult times because of the nuclear crisis after the Fukushima disaster. To educate ourselves, we've been to places that are related to the original Manhattan Project. We also co-organized Roses to Missions action in January this year, right before the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons entered into force. We delivered yellow roses and thank you certificate to UN missions of state parties that ratified the treaty. We also support the initiatives at the local level to establish nuclear weapon-free zone in New York City to promote divestment from nuclear. In terms of August 5th event, we've been organizing since 2015 in front of the Japanese consulate. We also set up appointment with high-level officials of the consulate. But because of COVID, we couldn't organize an in-person event last year, so we did a Zoom event. So we still have more than 13,000 nuclear weapons in the world, in addition to fissile material that could make additional 110,000 nuclear bombs. And 5 countries, US, Russia, UK, France, and somehow Japan hold most of the global non-military stockpile of separated plutonium. And why Japan? Why Japan has 46 tons of separated plutonium? Because Japan depends on the nuclear energy, and nuclear reactors produce plutonium, and they have more than 1,000 times more plutonium than that of DPRK. And think about that. And we also have issues of so-called nuclear umbrella of nuclear armed state. United States and Japan has a defense guideline, which basically says that United States will defend Japan by any means necessary, including nuclear forces. So what can we do to stop this madness? Mr. Kazuo Ishiguro, who was born in Nagasaki City 9 years after the war, once said that passing down memories of war to the next generation is our responsibility. So today we have amazing guest speakers. I hope that you will stay until the end of the program. We have music from Hiroshima, and also we have some latest updates on the Japan's plan to dump contaminated water from Fukushima into the Pacific. So thank you again for joining us. And now I'd like to turn it over to promising young organizer, Emily Rubino, Executive Director of Peace Action New York State.
Thank you, Mari. And thank you everyone for joining tonight. As Mari and Rachel have said, I'm Emily Rubino. I am the fairly new Executive Director of Peace Action New York State. And I really appreciate everyone joining us this morning to commemorate the 76th anniversary of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As you know, on this solemn anniversary, we gather to honor and mourn the lives of the over 215,000 people who were killed by the nuclear bombs dropped by the United States and who witnessed unspeakable horrors on those days and the ones that followed. We also gather to recommit ourselves to creating a world free of nuclear weapons and the threat they pose to our planet and to our humanity. With the average age of the Hibakusha in their 80s, this year's theme of passing down history to the next generation is extremely fitting. We continue to pass down the knowledge and wisdom of the Hibakusha and others who know firsthand the horrors of nuclear weapons in every stage of development, from uranium mining, nuclear testing, and the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And we make sure that we work towards a sustainable, just, and nuclear-free future. In my role at PANIS, I work with our 11 plus community chapters and allies and over 20 university chapters across the state to help bridge that gap in the peace movement and build the next generation of peace leaders. As a younger person myself, I really appreciate all the guidance and support and mentorship I've gained from everyone here and throughout the peace movement. In 2018, I was able to be a youth relay marcher at the Peace March in Japan and subsequently attend the World Conference Against Atomic and Hydrogen Bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And I've really taken those experiences with me back here to the US and passed those messages on to our students. I feel really grateful to have heard the stories of Hibakusha and to have met other young people working as part of the peace movement here and around the world. And I think there's a lot of hope and energy there. So as we celebrate this solemn anniversary, I think it's important to remember that we are making progress. The treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons entered into force earlier this year. That was still this year, 2021. And we've really made some important progress towards the abolition of nuclear weapons, though we know we have a lot of work to do as we move forward. So I'm really honored to have the opportunity to be here with all of you today and to hear from and uplift the stories of Hibakusha, uplift the work of other young peace activists, and continue to build our anti-nuclear movement. So thank you everyone for being here today and giving me the opportunity to speak this morning.
Thank you, Mary and Emily, for your amazing, wonderful messages. Now, I would like to invite Reverend Kenjitsu Nakangaki, who is a Buddhist priest ordained the 750 years old Jodo Shinshu tradition of Japanese Buddhism. He is president and founder of the Heiwa Peace Reconciliation Foundation of New York. He's also a president emeritus of the Buddhist Council of New York, a Hiroshima Peace Ambassador, Nagasaki Peace Correspondent, and an honorary board member of Interfaith Center of New York. Since 1994, Reverend Nakangaki has organized an interfaith peace event to commemorate the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombings. So this year, the 28th annual commemoration is online. He invites all to join the Hiroshima Day event this evening at 6:30 p.m. and the Nagasaki Day event on August 8th at 8 p.m. For more information, please see the link in the chat room. Now, please welcome Reverend Kenjitsu Nakangaki.
Hello. Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay, first of all. And I also put on the chat about the information you can find for tonight events and also the Sunday evening events. So it's an honor for me to be part of this wonderful peace events, peace program that you're preparing today. And I'm sure that many people will benefit out of this wonderful session. This session itself is filled with the great talks and films and all those things too. So I'm very excited to see all of them. And so for today, I'll be leading the silent meditation for this parts. And I believe it's very important to be prepare our own ourself, our own mind and our body too. We just sometimes need to breathe in, breathe out, simple one, but yet sometimes we forget to do that too. So this is a time so you can just calm down your mind. You'll be prepare yourself to really involve in this session today. So the things that we call it silent. So, maybe when you become silent, you can hear a lot of things actually. When you are talking, you cannot hear by yourself, but when you're probably being quiet, then you can listen and you can hear all of the sound, even the nature sound. You can hear the birds singing or, the crickets start, making noise too, or singing too. So all other kind, but also, sometimes you hear the cars passing and everything too. So in a way, that's a kind of surface way, but then at least it's you hear all those things. And listening should be very important to maintain the peace because, to bring the peace together, that we listen to each other. And interestingly, if you look at the words silent, the silent consists of S-I-L-E-N-T. If you change the order, you become listen, L-I-S-T-E-N. So actually, the silence means really listening. But then also listening means not just listen to the surface level, but then also very deep listening is very important. Because you see the picture right now in my two, from the Hiroshima pictures and the Nagasaki picture. Some people just see it, but even seeing itself is listening. So you try to listen to the voice from the Hiroshima people, the experience that they have. And then also Nagasaki, the same way, listen to the voice from the Nagasaki people. And so it's hearing. So when you being quiet, then you can hear others' sound, but also your own sound to yourself. So I will ring the 3 bells that represent 1 for Hiroshima, and then 1 Nagasaki, and then 1 yourself. So 3 bells as we listen, maybe you can thinking of the prayer for peace, but specifically focus on Hiroshima first. It's a first awareness of nuclear weapons, or the and then second awareness, Nagasaki. And then now we are here sitting or, being part of it. So that's the 3rd bell that I would like to bring for today. So, and then it's a one thing nice part of the silent means there's no one particular revision will be the leading, but rather all the different revisions. So you have your own, background, your own revision or non-revision, which is fine. Just bring the piece, bring your thoughts, bring your prayer together. So, and we are all interconnected. So it's nice to realize all those aspects as well. So that awareness is a deep listening, what I meant. So please join me in meditation. Place your palms together or any other way you like to do. And then try to relax your body. And try to breathe in, breathe out. Then 3 times, as I said, we ring the bell. It's for Hiroshima, now it's for Nagasaki. Lastly, for yourself. Yeah, thank you very much, and peace to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Nakangaki. It is now my honor to show you a video message from Ms. Sadae Kasaoka, who survived the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. Ms. Kasaoka is one of the founders of a peace organization called Hiroshima Peace Ribbon. She also served as a chief of the Hiroshima Prefectural Chapter of Girl Scouts. Please welcome Ms. Sadae Kasaoka.
Hi, こんにちは。笠岡貞恵です。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。1945年8月6日、広島に原子爆弾が投下されました。当時、私は12歳、中学1年生でした。学徒動員として工場勤務の予定でしたが、当日が休電日で、爆心地から3.5 キロの自宅にいて被爆しました。壊れたガラスで怪我をしましたが、半年ぐらいかかったんですが、傷が良くなりました。でもその後に体のあちこちに吹き出物ができて、長いこと治療したんです。薬がないので庭にあった入道草をつけたりしたんです。その後も貧血が続き困りました。
But it seems like we are experiencing some technical difficulty. So, would it be okay? Shall we start? Shall we skip Ms. Sadae Kasaoka until the technical issue will be resolved? So, next up is Mercy Van Vleck of the NYC Metro Raging Grannies, longtime political singer, performer. She performed solo at 22 Below and People's Voice Cafe and all over Southeast Pennsylvania with the folk duo Plain Folk. Please welcome Ms. Mercy Van Vleck.
This was a song written by our 32-year-old raging granny, Corrine Willinger. 92. She's 92 when she wrote it. It seems to me I heard that song before. Warmongers want another war. They say it's time to bomb Iran. First they invaded Iraq. Afghanistan was attacked. Then Libya they overran. Oh, so it seems that I once heard that song before. It was an old familiar war, and North Vietnam was our goal. We fought the Vietnamese. They brought us to our knees, and in the end we paid the toll. Oh, so it seems to me I heard that song before. It was the first atomic war. We bombed Hiroshima that time. Nagasaki burned to ash. Thousands vanished in that flash. The world must never forget that crime. Oh, so it seems. The song they have to sing has a negotiations ring. Sing it to every senator. We have to shout our demands. This warfare must be banned. We must stop all endless war. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. What a wonderful voice. So let's see if the technical issue is okay by now. So it is my honor to show you a video message from Ms. Sadae Kasaoka. Can we do it?
It was fine all year, Rachel.
What?
はい、こんにちは。笠岡貞恵です。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。1945年8月6日、広島に原子爆弾が投下されました。
Is it okay now?
当時、私は12歳、
Yes,
中
it's
学
good.
1年生でした。学徒動員として工場勤務の予定でしたが、当日が休電日で、爆心地から 3.5 キロの自宅にいて被爆しました。壊れたガラスで怪我をしましたが、半年ぐらいかかったんですが、傷が良くなりました。でもその後に体のあちこちに吹き出物ができて、長いこと治療したんです。薬がないので庭にあった入道草をつけたりしたんです。その後も貧血が続き困りました。8月6日の日、両親は建物疎開の手伝いに出かけました。ちょうど雑魚場といって広島市役所の裏手ぐらいになるんですけども、そこで被爆して死亡しました。9歳の弟と私、残されたんです。その後の生活は悲惨でした。神戸の商船学校在学中だった兄は19歳でした。学業を断念して家に戻ってきて就職し、生活を支えてくれました。上に3人の姉がいたんですけれども、姉が嫁ぎ先から手伝いに家に来てくれました。高校を卒業しましたけれども、就職や結婚の差別を受けたように感じました。 あちこちの会社、銀行、試験を受けましたがダメでした。お見合いしてもなかなかまとまりませんでした。縁があって結婚はできましたが、夫も被爆者でした。子供が5歳と2歳の時、夫は35歳で死亡しました。そこからまた私の試練が始まりました。ご近所、姑と一緒に住んでおりましたので、姑、職場で多くの人の支えがありました。どうにか生活ができるようになったのです。長男が小学校を入学し、長女が5年生になった時に心にゆとりができました。過去を振り返り、これまで多くの人に助けられて、親子ともども生きてきたんです。被爆体験証言を主には小学生とか中学生にしております。戦争は弱い人に犠牲を強いるんです。私が経験したような辛い悲しいことはこれからの子供にさせてはいけません。平和とは愛の心だと思います。人の話を聞く。意見が違っても認める。話し合う。お互いが分かり合える。これが愛の心ではないかと思います。それを子供たちに話をします。原爆の話を聞いて、子供たちは原爆の恐ろしいこと、戦争の悲惨さを胸に受け止めて、理解して行動に移してくれることを期待しています。みんな分かったよ。私たちが伝えるよ。と言ってくれます。人のことを考える、仲良くする、世界のことを考えるなど、感想と決意を皆さん送ってくださいます。それを読ませてもらって本当に話をしてよかったなと思います。来日したノーベル平和賞受賞者のムクーゲ医師に被爆証言をしました。その時、平和な未来を一緒に作りましょうと言葉をいただきました。世界中の人からそのようにいろんな言葉もいただき、これからも証言を通して平和の世界を作るために頑張っていきたいと思っております。
Wow. What an amazing lady. I'm deeply sorry that actually the technical issue was on my side. I'm so sorry for this. Next, we have another video message. This one is from Daiki Yano, who is senior of Nagasaki University, where he studies mechanical engineering. He attended the NPT review conference at the United Nations in 2019 as a member of the Nagasaki youth delegation and gave a speech about his grandmother, who was 17 in Hiroshima on August 6, 76 years ago. Please welcome Ms. Daiki Yano. Mr. Daiki Yano.
皆さん、こんにちは。本日はこのような機会を設けていただきありがとうございます。ご紹介にありました通り、 私は長崎ユース代表団という長崎の若者団体に所属し、NPT 会議に参加しました。そこで祖母の話をした際に田野さんと出会い、今回このような場で発表するに至ったことを大変嬉しく光栄に思っております。ありがとうございます。今、長崎・広島で原爆が落とされてから76年が経とうとしています。年々被爆者の方々の高齢化が進み、あの恐ろしい原爆の体験を直接語れる人の数も少なくなっています。私の祖母も先日93歳になりました。祖母は屋外にいたら全員即死と言われる爆心地から2キロ以内で被爆しました。爆心地近くの川には焼けた人々が水を求めて数百人と集まっていたそうです。しかし祖母は原爆の記憶を話すだけではありません。戦争の最中、祖母は広島で毒ガスを作る島に学徒動員で働かされていたことを話してくれました。おそらく毒ガスは国際的には使ってはいけない約束はあったはずなのに、隠れて作っていたのかもしれないと言っていました。また、私が国連に行く前にも、戦を仕掛けたのはあなたの国でしょうと、向こうの国の人々に言われかねないことを心に留めておくように言われました。きっと戦争で日本人が他の国の人々に対してやったことも、祖母は意識してこのことを言ったのかもしれないと思いました。私は広島・長崎で起きたことをどう語り継いでいくかで大事なことは、祖母のように被害・加害の垣根を越えて人がどんな過ちを犯してきたのか、歴史を大きな視点で見ることを忘れないことだと思います。そして今もなお13,330発も存在する核兵器が一発でも使われてしまえば、その影響はたちまち全世界に広がり、人類が絶滅する前に豊かな地球そのものがなくなってしまうことに想像力を使わなければならないと思います。人がこれまで犯してきた過ちにもしっかりと目を向け、核なき平和な世界を作っていくために、私は祖母の原爆体験をこれからも伝え続けていきたいと思っております。改めて今日は素敵な機会を設けていただき、マンハッタンプロジェクト for a Nuclear Free World の皆さんをはじめ、関係者の皆様方に感謝申し上げます。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Wow, what a deep message. Next up is another video message from Matsuki Kamoshita, who is 18 years old and used to live in Iwaki City, Fukushima, when the nuclear accident occurred 10 years ago. He evacuated with his mother and younger brother in order to avoid radiation exposure and continues to do so. After the nuclear accident, all the nuclear power plants in Japan were shut down, but some of them are now being restarted under the pretext of economic benefits and zero carbon emission. As a result, inconvenient facts are hidden, stories are twisted, and the victims' voices are ridiculed as rumors, which only exacerbates their suffering. Please listen to his story, who spent most of his childhood as a victim of the nuclear accident. Here's his video message.
When I was 8 years old, a nuclear accident occurred in Fukushima. A lot of radioactive materials were spewed out from the broken nuclear power plants. It was carried by the wind and rained down on the capital city of Tokyo, 250 kilometers away. The town where I lived was 40 kilometers away from the plant. The missionary and his wife in my hometown returned to the US on the recommendation of the US government. However, The Japanese government did not issue an evacuation order for a town. So my parents chose to evacuate on their own to protect me and my 3-year-old brother from radiation exposure. People like us, who evacuated from outside the evacuation zone set by the government, received very little government assistance, even though we were internally displaced people. The provision of evacuation housing was also terminated at an early stage. In addition, due to various misunderstandings, we were accused of being fake evacuees, people who fled without permission, and people who were sneaky. Since the adults were in such a state, naturally the children were also worried. In my case, it was to the point that I wanted to kill myself. The more the politicians and corporations tried to hide the damage and escape from their accountability, the more the logic was distorted, and the more we, the victims, had to suffer. We learned in history class that nuclear power was once promoted as a peaceful use of nuclear energy. However, what I have learned in the past 10 years is that there was no peaceful life where nuclear power plants existed. No matter how hard we try, we cannot undo what has been done, and they will continue to emit radiation even after we are dead. Nuclear power plants and nuclear weapons impose a heavy burden on children yet to be born. What is most frightening is the people who have no intention of taking accountability are still manipulating them. So they lie. I think it's a shame to close off the future by piling up lies to hide responsibility, or by turning a blind eye to this necessary evil. Admitting a mistake is painful, but acknowledging and forgiving mistake is the way to open up the future. I would like to further the dialogue for this purpose. Let's work together for a future without lies or radiation.
Truth hurts, doesn't it? Well, next up is Yuki Miyamoto, who is a professor at DePaul University in Chicago. She teaches nuclear discourse and ethics. Her monographs include Beyond the Mushroom Cloud in 2011, なぜ原爆が悪ではないのか in 2020, and A World Otherwise, Environmental Praxis in Minamata in 2021. Yuki was appointed as Nagasaki Peace Correspondent and Hiroshima Peace Ambassador. So please welcome Professor Yuki Miyamoto.
Thank you, Rachel. It is such an honor to be a part of this commemoration. Thank you all for having me here today. I'm Yuki Miyamoto, a native of Hiroshima and a long-term resident of the city of Chicago, where the first chain reaction took place as part of the Manhattan Project. As a second-generation hibakusha, which refers to people who have suffered from atomic bombings, I have witnessed my mother's health issues throughout her life. She was only 6 years old and a mile away from the hypocenter when the bomb exploded in Hiroshima in 1945. She did not talk about her experience, but had to receive the blood booster shots every other week in her 40s. because her body was unable to produce healthy blood. Eventually, she was diagnosed with cancer and passed away after a 6-year battle. I would like to emphasize that the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not merely huge bombs whose initial blast alone harmed people. The subsequent radiation exposure left people with lifelong illnesses, anxiety about their own health, and concern for the health of their children and grandchildren. Despite this multi-generational and multifaceted destruction, too many weapons and radioactive materials still exist on Earth, harming people and the environment at uranium mines, fuel production sites, plutonium pit assembly facilities, nuclear test grounds, and areas contaminated with nuclear waste. Even the process of decontamination, which is in fact transcontamination, given that the half-lives of some radioactive nuclei are far longer than human history, continues to lead to radiation sufferers. This is not merely an issue of national security, but an issue of human rights, environmental justice, gender inequality, and distribution of wealth, as the damage are too often observed among underprivileged and underrepresented people. These effects poignantly reveal the fact that nuclear deterrence theory has never protected, but entirely disregarded such populations in the US and elsewhere. Since radiation knows no bounds, we must unite our voices against the nuclear industrial complex, overcoming our differences in race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, political allegiance, religious affiliation, and national identity. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Miyamoto. That was so much a very important information there. Well, heartbroken by the Japanese government's stance of turning its back on the nuclear weapon ban treaty, a loosely connected group of high school and university students, office workers, and cafe workers launched a civil society group in Hiroshima called Kakuwaka. They asked their elected representatives of the Diet whether they are prepared to take decisive action towards a world without nuclear weapons. Then they widely disseminated the information through social networking services such as Facebook and Twitter, as well as through websites to raise public awareness. Today, we are very excited to share this young group's powerful video message with you. Here we go.
We launched a lobbying group called Kakuwaka Hiroshima in January 2019. It's an initiative led by youth in Hiroshima who are inspired and motivated by the success of 2017 Nobel Peace Prize winner ICAN. We meet with parliamentarians and elected officials to ask them their opinion on the Japanese government's refusal to join the nuclear ban treaty. Some support the treaty and ask the government to join it, but some don't, saying it's not realistic without participation of nuclear states, and it's different from their approach.
Our aim is not just know their opinions. We want to raise public awareness on these issues by letting them know the ideas of our Diet members. We share them on our social media to help voters make informed decisions during elections.
Over the past 2 years, we saw a small but big change in attitude of some of our representatives. For example, some made positive remarks about Japan joining the first meeting of states parties as an observer. This is something we had never seen when we started our action.
However, Japan still turned its back on the treaty. We also hear negative comments that question the effectiveness of what we do and support nuclear deterrence from the public. But we will never give up. The reason is very simple.
We realize because Japan, the only country to have suffered the wartime use of nuclear weapons, has a duty to join the treaty.
We rise because the underlying motivation here is not security or diplomacy, but greed and personal gain for the few.
We rise because we know the ultimate evil of nuclear weapons will be the inheritance of the next generation if we do nothing.
We are a generation that has not known a world without nuclear weapons. We will not rely on the old way, but instead move forward to a future where universal well-being for all is valued and prioritized. We will leave this world better than we found it.
To those countries who feel they must depend on nuclear weapons, or a so-called nuclear umbrella, including Japan, we ask you to cease your complicity. If you continue to insist that the nuclear ban treaty is meaningless, we, the youth of Hiroshima, expect you to offer alternatives. We expect you to live up to your promise to move forward in good faith to realize a nuclear-free world.
And to the people of the world, we invite you to imagine a world without nuclear weapons. A world that the youth of Hiroshima believe is possible and are working to make a reality.
Join us!
Yes, it is us who can change the world. What a powerful message it was. So next up is NYC Metro Raging Grannies. In the tradition of wise women, elders, elders, the mission of the Raging Grannies, is to promote global peace, justice, social, economic equality by raising public awareness through the medium of song and humor. There are now more than 60 gaggles of Raging Grannies throughout Canada and the United States. This video was made by Mary Lutz and her other half, Peter. Please welcome NYC Metro Raging Grannies singing No Nuclear Proliferation.
Nuclear proliferation. We must stop its global spread, or the peoples of the whole world have to live in fear and dread. We must all tell all the nations we cannot have nuclear war. peace and justice, common safety. That is what we're marching for. We must destroy atomic weapons. We must make them disappear. We cannot have our lives shattered. And the bombs are everywhere.
Initiate fire. One. Initiate fire. One.
Nuclear proliferation. We must stop its global spread. Or the people of the whole world have to live in fear and dread.
I don't think that was a good idea. Do you? Okay, I got you.
Okay, well, let me introduce you next to a mother and her daughter. They are Kathleen and Sarah Birkinshaw. Kathleen is the author of multiple awards-winning book, The Last Cherry Blossom. It is a story about her mother who was in Hiroshima when the atomic bomb was dropped. Also, this book is recommended for teachers and students as an educational material on nuclear issues by the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs. Here is their video message.
Good morning. I want to thank you all for inviting us and letting us be here live today. I am a second generation Hibakusha, but I didn't know my mother was from Hiroshima until I was 11. I wouldn't learn of her horrific memories until I was 31 years old and very ill and diagnosed with reflex sympathetic dystrophy, a chronic progressive neurological pain disease that affects the sympathetic nervous system and the immune system. Doctors have said that the deficiencies in my immune system are due to the radiation my mother was exposed to in the atomic bomb. On the morning of August 6th, 76 years ago, my mother was outside chatting with her best friend when an ear-shattering popping noise and an intense burst of white light caused the ground to shake as they just clung to each other and screamed. By the end of that day, my mother would have watched her beloved papa die, lost her best friend, and her home was destroyed. Over the next few years, she would lose the family that she grew up with due to radiation sickness. My mother was only 12 years old, yet she was old enough to remember these horrifying memories that kept reliving in her nightmares for her entire life. They were always worse in August, but she had them until she passed away at the age of 82 in 2015. My mother lost so much that day, yet she never lost her ability to love. But I did witness and live through her scarring from the atomic bombing as I watched and reacted to her PTSD symptoms. I also live with it now as I battle reflex sympathetic dystrophy each day. My mom was the bravest person that I will ever know, and I am so honored that she chose and entrusted my daughter and myself with her memories and her heart. Her love for us and her strength emboldens me to push through my pain and to continue to tell her story and to use The Last Cherry Blossom with students. I've had the privilege of visiting with thousands of students worldwide, and the one thing they say that brings them to action and wanting to do something is the story of a 12-year-old little girl in Hiroshima and how easily she could be one of them. Time has passed. We're 76 years afterwards, and technology and the way we can meet people changes. But that need for human connection through our emotions, that's timeless. And so we need to be sure that the future voters or the voters and the leaders, for them to really pay attention to the treaties and the research and the statistics. They need to know of the hearts broken, the lives shattered, the homes and the loved ones lost, and the lifetime of physical and emotional scars. They need to make that connection to the humanity under those now famous mushroom clouds, so that no family ever has to go through that again. My daughter and I do what we do out of love for my mom and for the family we never got a chance to meet. We do it for that 12-year-old little girl who lost her world in an instant, but she filled our world with love and light. Thank you for honoring all the atomic bomb victims of nuclear disasters, from nuclear testing. And thank you for all your work toward peace and helping us to keep their stories alive.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and I am a third generation hibakusha. And I remember being in 7th grade in my social studies class, and we were learning about World War II. We had learned about World War II for a few years now, but this was the first time we talked about Japan, specifically Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Out of our entire textbook, Hiroshima and Nagasaki only had 2 paragraphs and 1 picture, which was the famous mushroom cloud. At the end of the day, all my classmates could talk about was how cool this mushroom cloud looked. They were laughing and making jokes, and it made me so angry. I was so upset. My grandma was under that cloud. We lost family that day and in the years afterwards. And I went home that day still very upset. And I talked to my mom and I asked her if she would come in and speak to them about my grandma's story, because I knew they weren't trying to be mean. They weren't being malicious. They just didn't know. They didn't understand. And I wanted them to. And with my grandma's permission, my mom came in and spoke with them. And it really made a difference. And that was the beginning of The Last Cherry Blossom. And now as an adult, I still believe that when people throw around wanting to nuke other countries and talking about nuclear warfare as if it's nothing, I know that they just don't understand. I know they're not bad people. And that if we can continue to share the stories and the memories of survivors like my grandma, of the people who lost their lives that day, and later on, the people who suffered, I really believe that we can make a difference. They were people just like us. They liked to listen to jazz music. They went to school, they went to work, they had friends. They just wanted peace. They wanted the war to be over. They're just like everyone else. And I truly believe that if we can get that message across to people young and old, I think we really can achieve a future where we are nuclear free. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen and Sarah. Next up is Tarek. Tarek Tarakov was a U.S. Army paratrooper in the early 60s. He became an anti-war activist soon after his military service ended. For the past 15 years, he has been a dedicated member of Veterans for Peace, including 6 years on the VFB National Board of Directors. Along with his life partner, Alan Davidson, they have organized and participated in veteran peace delegations to Palestine, Okinawa, Jeju Island, South Korea, Ireland, Standing Rock, North Dakota, and other locations to stand with local activists resisting oppression. He is currently the editor-in-chief of Peace and Planet News. He believes that the use of military armed force is never the way to peace. Today, Tarek is reading our open letter on behalf of all the organizations and individuals who co-sponsored this event and endorsed this letter. Please welcome Tarek Tarakov.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, everybody. I'm so moved to be here and honored. This is the open letter to the people of Japan from concerned peace and civil society organizations of the United States. I'm going to read it. We, the undersigned, representing a coalition of concerned peace and civil society organizations in the United States, are advocating for the abolition of nuclear weapons globally. We join together to express our sincere regrets and apologies for our nation's atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Although our government has not apologized, I'm so moved by what I just heard and saw. You'll have to forgive me for a minute. Although our government has not apologized officially for this horror, we would like to extend our deepest condolences to the atomic bomb survivors, Hibakusha, who have endured great mental and physical hardships for 76 years. On January 22nd, 2021, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons entered into force. The treaty does not legally bind the United States because our government has neither signed nor ratified it. However, all nuclear weapons, including the US stockpile, have been declared unlawful by the international community. The entry into force of the treaty is the beginning of a new movement to confront nuclear-armed states and demand that they cease producing or further upgrading nuclear weapons and agree to destroy those illegal weapons under the terms of the treaty. We promise to continue demanding that the government of the United States sign and ratify the treaty and embark on a multilateral dialogue with all nuclear-armed states to eliminate all nuclear weapons on this planet. We call upon Japan to relinquish the so-called, quote, nuclear umbrella, unquote, of the United States by swiftly signing and ratifying the treaty and attend as an observer the first meeting of state parties in January 2022. We are concerned that many of the non-nuclear weapon states, such as Japan, believe that regional security is enhanced by the nuclear weapons of the United States. However, the world has become more dangerous under such nuclear deterrence policy. We recognize that relying on the nuclear umbrella of the nuclear-armed states is a form of conspiring to engage in unlawful activities under international law. The treaty prohibits nations from developing, producing, stockpiling, or threatening to use nuclear weapons, but also prohibits nations from encouraging or inducing anyone to engage in any of these activities. We call on Japan to support the peace process on the Korean Peninsula and collaborate with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the Republic of Korea to establish a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Northeast Asia region, along with the US, Russia, UK, France, and China as protocol parties. Here in the United States, the Peace on the Korean Peninsula Act was recently introduced by Congressman Brad Sherman. The bill supports the commitments made at Panmunjom in April of 2018 by the leaders of the Korean Peninsula and calls for the US Secretary of State to pursue serious, urgent diplomatic engagement with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the Republic of Korea in pursuing a binding peace agreement constituting a formal end to the Korean War. We add our voices to international calls for the Japanese government to halt its recent decision to release approximately 1.25 million metric tons of radioactive water from the damaged Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean. We request that Japan explore alternative, safer options for long-term storage at or near the Fukushima Daiichi to protect the environment and to minimize the health impacts on people and all living things. We must not forget that communities in the Pacific are still living with the remaining contamination, exposure, decimated environments, and generational trauma from nuclear testing conducted by nuclear-armed states, such as the United States. Japan has been suffering from the 2011 nuclear accident, which is the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. The disaster forced some 160,000 residents to evacuate. Tens of thousands are still displaced. Thyroid cancer, one of the known adverse effects of radiation exposure, has been on the rise among children. The use of nuclear technology, whether military or civilian, comes with enormous risks and incalculable consequences. Effective global nuclear disarmament will not be possible as long as we allow the commercial use of plutonium and highly enriched uranium. We look forward to continuing our collaboration to achieve a nuclear-free world, whereas the preamble of your Constitution states, all people of the world have the right to live in peace, free from fear and want. No more Hiroshima, no more Nagasaki, no more Fukushima, no more war, no more Hibakusha, never again. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarek. It was very, very important to share the ongoing nuclear issues in Japan right now. So now I would like to invite Mari Inoue, Ellen Davidson, Emily Rubino to the floor for the reports on a meeting at the Japanese consulate on August 2nd. Please welcome Mari Inoue, Ellen Davidson, and Emily Rubino.
Thank you very much. First of all, we'd like to thank all the organizations and individuals who endorsed our open letter. The letter, let me give you a brief background of the meeting. We have been gathering in front of the Japanese consulate on August 5th, or one of those work days, to hold a peace gathering. And we also set up an appointment with the Japanese high-level officials of the Japanese consulate to deliver a bouquet of flowers and an open letter. And this year, we are able to meet with Mr. Sakuraba, whose name is literally means cherry blossom garden. Mr. Sakuraba, who is a consul of the Japanese consulate of New York City, and two other consuls were there at the meeting. And let's hear from Ellen, and after that, Emily, and after that, I will do some follow-ups.
I like Tarek. I'm sort of a little tearful having been listening to these presentations. And I just want to congratulate all of you on putting together this whole program of wonderful presentations. Thank you so much on this day of all days. So yeah, I was the flower girl, and I felt that as a U.S. citizen, my role was really to be there to apologize for the criminal actions of our country and our government and our military against the people of Japan. And And I also spoke as a member of Veterans for Peace, even though I'm personally not a veteran, saying that all of the people that I work with are veterans who have come to really deeply regret their role in any kind of wars that they've been involved in. So I presented the flowers and the symbology to them, and they, I think, appreciated that we take the time to do this every year, because we can never forget the criminal nature of the only country that has ever used nuclear weapons on a civilian population. So I think it's important every year that we do this. So thank you.
Emily?
Great. Yes, thank you again, everyone. This program has been really moving. But yeah, I think similar to Ellen, I think it's really important that we hold this meeting every year. And I think that the commemorative aspect of it is the most important. I think, you know, the meeting itself was kind of brief and very cordial. I feel like we weren't really given a lot of information. We shared the open letter with them and expressed, you know, our hope for Japan to join the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and give up this nuclear umbrella. And they didn't really give us much of a response to that, or the news of their plan to dump the radioactive waste into the ocean. So it felt very similar to me to like congressional lobby meetings we've had, where it's just kind of a lot of like nodding and we'll pass that along, and not a lot of concrete new things out of the meeting. But I really agree with Ellen in that I think it's really important that we continue to have this meeting to keep up, you know, this tradition and the importance of it. And I think even if we're not being shared much information in the meeting, they are passing that on. And I think it's important that we're reminding them every year that this is the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were terrible. And this is something we remember and we all feel deep regret for, because it was done in, you know, our names as US citizens. And I think, yeah, I think that it's symbolically very important, but the meeting itself was maybe less substantive than we were hoping. But I think it's good that they know we're here and they know that we care and are watching, and are going to continue to share our message with them, even if we're not going to get an immediate response. So thank you, Mari, for inviting me to the meeting.
Thank you, both Ellen and Emily. So we asked questions whether Japan is going to sign and ratify the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or whether they're discussing about it. And our consul said that he cannot share anything about that. We also asked whether Japan is planning to attend the first state party meeting, which will be held next year, January, with the state parties who ratify the treaty. And they also said, Mr. Sakuraba also said that he cannot share that information. In regard to the normalizing situation with the leaders of the Korean Peninsula, he didn't give us any substantive answer. Instead, he said that we are waiting until they are waiting until the Olympics is over, which didn't answer to our question, which was quite disappointing. They also said that there will be a national election soon in Japan. So what does it mean? And also regarding the Japan's recent decision to dump radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, Mr. Sakuraba clearly said that they consulted with the scientists and they concluded that it's safe to the ocean. Yes, that's what he said. And in regard to that, we received the very important updates from our friends in Japan. Organization is called Gensuikin, which is the largest and one of the oldest anti-nuclear groups. And Gensuikin and 7 other organizations recently had meetings in Tokyo with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, which is the decision maker of this contaminated water issue. And the meeting was held less than 10 days ago. And according to them, a Minister of Foreign Affairs said that releasing from exhaust pipes or pipelines would not constitute ocean dumping under the London Protocol. And therefore, the policy, the decision that Japan is going to release will not be affected, will not be considered as ocean dumping. So I interpreted this that they're going to stick to the plan, and they believe that dumping the contaminated water from Fukushima is not a violation of international law. That's what I interpreted. And in regard to the meeting with the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, according to them, the ministry responded that it will take about 2 years before they actually start releasing the radioactive water into the ocean. And they're going to dilute the water and release to the ocean, and therefore there will be no impact to the environment. And in this regard, they're going to do their best to get understanding from interested parties. So I interpreted their response that they're going to stick to the plan, and they're going to put their efforts on PR campaigns that their plan is safe to the ocean, safe to the environment, no one will be harmed, which is very sad. So Manhattan Project for Nuclear Free World is planning to organize a rally and march on October 2nd in New York City. And we are reaching out to organizations in other cities as well to oppose Japan's plan to dump radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. So if your organizations are interested in joining us in New York City or organize a similar rally in different cities, please reach out to us. It's October 2nd. Please save the date. And we plan to have march from 42nd Street and walk up to the United Nations and have a rally, hopefully at the plaza on 47th Street near the United Nations. So let us know. Please reach out to us if you're interested in joining the rally and co-organizing the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, Emily, and Alan. Yes, everybody, please leave the date open, October 2nd. Now, we would like to show you a music video by Mayu Seto, peace activist, singer-songwriter from Hiroshima. Please welcome Mayu Seto.
1945年ね、8月6日の朝、電車に降りてこの橋を渡ってここに来ました。ここで原子爆弾が炸裂して、ここで私は伏せました、この道路で。ですから広島に住んでて、ここを通るたびに、ここで被爆したんだ。
君の歌声が でもほら耳すませて聞こえるメロディー海の向こうから重なり広がるハーモニー大好きな景色を一瞬で奪うもの悲しみの源は今もそこにある真っ白な未来に向かう背中に黒くうごめく影に気づけたなら Colorful world つなげてゆこう君の僕のあの子の目に映る景色を見える明日は何色ですか七色に染まった未来に羽ばたく折り鶴君の歌声を聞いたあの子が描く未来に笑顔があふれるように
Thank you, Mitsuto Mayu. The Hibakusha featured in this film, Mr. Lee, is a Korean, so he's double suffering as a victim of atomic bombs and also forcibly brought to Japan during the wartime. Now you understand why the Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World is trying to resolve the Korean War as soon as possible. Now, we would like to, now we are almost at the end of our program. Again, I would like to apologize deeply for the technical difficulty over my side. Now, I would like to invite Mari Inoue again for some closing remarks. Please welcome Mari Inoue.
Thank you, Rachel. And thank you everyone who stuck with us until the end. We hope that today's event was not disappointing, but rather inspiring and uplifting for many of you. If you live in a nuclear-armed states, please continue reaching out to elected officials and demand that the government cease producing or further upgrading nuclear weapons and agree to destroy those illegal weapons under the terms of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. If you live in countries that are dependent on the so-called nuclear umbrella of a nuclear-armed state, collaborate with groups of the nuclear-armed state and reach out to elected officials. Emphasize that such nuclear deterrence policy is making their community more dangerous and demand that the government give up such policy. If you're representatives of civil society groups or diplomats, please reach out to UN missions, embassies, or consulates of nuclear-armed states and suggest that they embark on a multilateral dialogue with all nuclear-armed states to sit down and sign a legally binding agreement that promises to stop producing or upgrading nuclear weapons or conducting nuclear testing and eliminate all nuclear weapons on this planet in accordance to the treaty. So thank you again for joining us. Special thanks to the guest speakers, as well as the volunteers who work behind the scene, Jun-san, Tony-san, Tai-san, Rachel, Sally. And we hope that we'll be able to see you soon in future events. So no nukes. Thank you.